Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve and this is a 5-minute review of The Mule from 2018. The film is directed and starring Clint Eastwood in a main role as Earl Stone, and the cast in this film is pretty phenomenal. From people like Richard Hurd, you have Clint's daughter Alison Eastwood, you have Dianne Wiest, Bradley Cooper, you got Michael Peña, you got Laurence Fishburne. Honestly, the film is just stuffed with an amazing cast of actors. So the film is loosely based on a real story about a former World War II veteran who was actually a drugs mule for the cartel. And Eastwood has taken this film, someone else wrote it, called Nick Schenk, and this is the second film that he's worked on with Eastwood. He wrote the screenplay for Gran Torino, and he also wrote the screenplay and the story for a great film called The Judge from 2014, which I really like, starring Robert Downey Jr., Robert Duvall, and Billy Bob Thornton. So they've updated the story slightly by saying that Earl Stone is a Korean War veteran who in the early 2000s, around the early 2005 period, he was at the top of his game as a horticulturist. He breeds this special variety of flowers and he wins lots of awards and he's very popular and he's doing very well within the industry. However, he has very poor relationships with his family. He doesn't speak to his daughter. He's divorced from his wife because he's devoted his entire life to his work, that he's just been a poor husband and father. Fast forward 10 years and the internet has basically destroyed his business and he has to foreclose and now he has no business, no money, no income. He's trying to make up for lost time with his granddaughter, who's now getting engaged, but he hasn't spoken to his own daughter in about 14 years, and he rarely speaks to and talks to his ex-wife. So he's a man with nowhere to go and nothing to do but time on his hands. A chance encounter with someone leads him to this place where they've said, oh, if you just drive, they'll pay you. So he doesn't really know what he's getting into at first, but he goes to this tyre place, picks up a bag. They say to him, go to this place, drive there, leave the keys, come back in an hour and pick up your money, and that's it. This isn't a spoiler because the title of the film is The Mule. He's in fact moving drugs for one of the Mexican cartels. Another actor in this film who I forgot to mention is Andie Garcia, who plays the head of this crime family. And over time, Earl starts to build up a reputation. He does multiple runs for them. He's told never to look in the bag. Inevitably he does, and he sees what he's doing, but he keeps on doing it. He makes a lot of money. He starts to build bridges with his family. He starts to help out where he can because suddenly he's flush with money. The other side of the story is that Bradley Cooper and Laurence Fishburne and Michael Peña are part of a team trying to crack down on the cartel. And inevitably these two storylines collide in a slightly predictable way, but that's not really the nature of what the film is actually about. The end was never really in question. One of the things of Eastwood's directing style, which I've heard many actors talk about, is that he lets people do a take, talks to them, ask if they think they need to do another one. Sometimes he will encourage them, but if they're happy with it and he's happy with it, he will move on. He isn't someone that'll make them do it over and over and over again unnecessarily. He has a very kind of relaxed style, and that seems to have worked for him extremely well, given the success he's had as a director over the years, and also the fact he's able to get really amazing performances from the actors. Andie Garcia had never worked with Eastwood before, and he said he was willing to play any role, no matter it was, if he could be in this film with Eastwood directing. And he does fantastic work in this too. Eastwood himself is perhaps mirroring someone who's a little bit more racist than he is, as he's 91-year-old in this film, and I think Eastwood is similar to that age, but not quite. And the guy is just a little bit out of touch. He spent so much time in his industry, not many time with his family, that he doesn't really know that the world has moved on. He doesn't understand technology, he doesn't understand society at large and different groups. But to be fair to him, he is quite accommodating. He talks to people, he finds out about them, he wants to know them as individuals. So even though at first he's rude or just abrupt, he does take people under his wing, he does talk to them, and he finds out. And despite this, the character of Earl builds a rapport with people that shouldn't care about him and shouldn't like him. And that's something that's quite sweet in this film, that at times can be very dark and very distressing. There's an emotional core to this film that revolves around the character of Earl Stone, his burgeoning relationship with his granddaughter, the cold shoulder that he has from his own daughter who he's basically been estranged from for over a decade, and the difficult relationship that he has with his ex-wife. And all of the actors give fantastic performances in this. The fact that the actress playing his daughter in the film is his real daughter is kind of irrelevant, but there's a bit of a sparkle there. Maybe it just comes from her excellent performance, or maybe it comes from being able to portray that effectively on screen with her own father. Earl even has an unusual, quite friendly relationship with the Mexican handlers. These are the people who give him the bag in the film before he starts to go away. Actors like Robert Lasada, who at first is quite an intimidating man to look at, with the bald head, the beard and the tattoos, and so all the other guys that handle the drugs. They've got guns, they're very scary, they're very intimidating, but after a while they begin to like him, they begin to talk to him, they treat him friendly. And he asks about their family and says, how's your son doing? Oh, he's very good. Thank you for asking. And they just begin to like him because he's always reliable. He always does what he said he's going to do. And despite him being, 90 years old, they like him. They just can't help themselves. So as much as the story is about the attempt to find the drugs and stop the gang, really it's an emotional story about a man who's trying to reconnect with his family. And it's only at the second time around with his granddaughter that he's actually learned the value of family and what it's really all about. And he tries to impart his wisdom that he's learned the hard way to many people across the course of the film, to show them that money and a job isn't everything. You really need to focus on other things. And this comes out in quite unusual and interesting ways across the course of the film. There are some action scenes in this, but obviously they're few and far between, given the main character is 90 years old. But there's always a hint of violence lurking around the edges, whether it's to do with the cartels and the guns and the drugs. There's this threat that something is coming and the end is not going to be good or pleasant, that somebody is going to have to fail for somebody else to win in this war on drugs, war on the cartel. So overall, is this a high-octane action film that's going to be seat of your pants? No, it's not. It's an emotional film. It's a drama with some action in it. So if I was scoring it purely from the perspective of an action film, then I'd say this isn't a Saturday night pizza and beer film. This is something much more mellow for like a chilled out Sunday evening when you're winding down, perhaps. As a piece of filmmaking, it's really interesting, especially if you're a cinephile, to see how he works and how he sets things up, especially because he's such a seasoned actor and also director for decades worth of work. So that makes it a little bit difficult to give it a score despite what I've said, because it is brilliant and I didn't dislike anything about it, but the slightly predictable nature of the film is kind of warring with the idea of that's not really what it's about. So I'm probably going to give this 4 out of 5 bags and say it is really good, but it's not a perfect film compared to some of the previous films in the past that we've given 5 bags. So, have you seen The Mule? If so, get in touch and let me know. Do you agree with my score or not? You can contact us in all of the usual ways. We're on email, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Bags of Action will always be free, but if you like what we do, you can support us on our Ko-fi. I'll be back next week with another review.